here we go, and I'm going to get you started on the second of these The Folio Explained video series. Today I'm going to be talking to you about time management. Time management is typically the part of the folio where we start thinking about how long it's going to take us to do the project and what plan we're going to put together to make sure that we achieve it on time. So let's get started. I'm going to let you know what a Gantt chart is to start with, and then you're going to understand how Gantt charts are used in other industries, and then you're going to work out how we use these Gantt charts to actually plan the way we use our time in a project, and then you're going to go off at the end of the video and hopefully put together your own plan for the project based on what you've just learned. So let's get straight into it. To start with, a Gantt chart is a bar chart. So if you think of all of the different charts you've learned about, probably in maths and science, you've got column graphs, bar graphs, pie charts, etc. This is effectively a bar chart. The bar chart helps us see a visual representation of each of the parts of the project scheduled across a time period. So if you think of the X and the Y axes, you've got all of the jobs that need to be done in your project against all of the time that you have to get the project done. So we start with, in week 1 we're going to do this, in week 2 we're going to do that, etc. Now, Gantt charts are used for planning projects of all different sizes. You can use a Gantt chart to plan your homework, but it's probably a bit of a waste of time because it's such a small project. But they're really valuable for those enormous projects, and they're a really useful way of showing you what work is going to be done on each individual day. Now, in industry, if we're thinking about, construction industry, a Gantt chart doesn't just have what week or what day, it will have the specific date. So if we went to the 19th of April 2021, we could see exactly what jobs are meant to be happening on the construction site for that specific day. The benefit of the Gantt chart is being visual, really easy to read, and secondly, it helps you really easily work out the start and the finish date of each part. And it can then help you see how each process in the design process or the construction process is actually linked together. For example, I need to get this part of the project done before I can start this. Okay? And that's represented by 2 bars being separate from each other. But when they overlap, that means they can actually happen at the same time. Okay? So it's a visual representation to help you understand those things. So here I've got a sample up here. This is just a generic one, it's got no real detail in it. But you can see across the top, okay, it's got time, that's the first axis. And down the side, it's got your projects or your tasks. That's your other axis. So your X and Y axes are there. And we can see that in the first month, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects that need to be finished and 2 projects that need to be started. So 7 projects in total. We can see that project 1 goes for quite a long period of time. Task 1 goes for about half of that. Task 2 also goes for about half of that time, but because they overlap, milestone 1 happens at the same time as this one right here. So you can actually see tasks that are separate and tasks that are the same. If I look at this pink task here, for example, task 3, because it's listed as starting after task 2, then that means task 2 needs to be finished before task 3 can start. Now, if task 2 takes a little bit longer, that means the whole project gets pushed back. So everything below here gets pushed all the way back to whenever task 2 actually ends up finishing. So Gantt chart, visual representation, time, tasks. You see activities, time. Now where are these used? They're used everywhere. Lots of different industries use them. Basically, if you're running a project, so if you've got a big job that you're working on, then you're going to use them. Construction industry, I said that, they definitely use them. If you work for a game company or a marketing company, they definitely use them. If you work in the software development, they definitely use them. Movie industry, definitely use them. Furniture makers, absolutely we use them as well to help us plan our projects, particularly if we might have multiple projects we're working on at the same time, or if we have to get our projects done by a certain time in order for the client to use them. So here you go, another example here. This is a construction Gantt chart. You can see it's got time across the top, it's got years and the months in those years. Down the side, it's got all the different parts of the construction process. So you can see contract writing is going to take 1, 2, 3 and a bit months. Contract signing, 1, 2, 3 months. Securing finance, 1, 2, 3 months. Obtaining permits, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. And then in August, no work's getting done. Then they actually start doing work on the project in February. But they can't start the plumbing until September after all the permits have been obtained. While they're doing the plumbing, some of the electrical gets done. While they're doing the electrical, some of the roofing gets done. But no inspections happen until the plumbing, electrical and roofing is all finished. And then the client moves in and that's the end of the project. So we can see all of the different tasks really easily laid out across time. Here's an example of some game development. If you were making a new Fortnite game or a new Angry Birds game or Flappy Golf, whatever game it might be, you would have a bit of a timeline as well to help you work out what parts of the project need to be done at different times. This could be sketching your ideas, your prototypes, coming up with your mood boards, doing some research, doing some prototyping, practicing with the programming and the design. Time, activities. You're starting to see Gantt charts always look the same. Time across one side, activities down. Okay? So time across the top, activities listed down the page. How do we actually now make one of these for our project? Well, it's really easy. I've broken it into some simple guides. If we think of my project, the entertainment unit that I'm making for that client to go in their house that they've recently purchased, I would start by breaking the project down into small steps. So I'd start by saying things like, well, I'm going to need to cut some timber. Well, that means I'm going to need to buy some timber, which means I need to pick the timber. I'm going to need to do some drawings. I'm going to need to cut the joints. I'm going to need to glue them together, etc. If I want to produce a Gantt chart, then I'm going to actually need to make sure that I put together all of those steps broken down into little pieces, but then I'm also going to need to make sure I put them in the right order. Once I've got them in the right order, it's actually going to become a lot easier for me to then go through and start sequencing them. Because the next thing is I put them in the table. I put them in the order that I want, and you can see I've got them right down here in my activity column. The next step that I need to take is to estimate how long is it going to take to actually do each of these. And I reckon picking timber might take half a day. That's because I've got to go to the shop, I've got to have a look around, I've got to pick the timber. There you go, a couple hours. Then I've got to measure it out. That also might take half a day. Cut it, biscuit it, glue it, thickness it and sand it. And I've got all the different days that I think it's going to take. Now, the estimations need to be based on how long do I think it's actually going to take. Now, the first time you make a project, you're probably going to be way off because you're just guessing. But the more you do each step, the more you start to realize how long each step actually takes. Now, here we go. We then fill in the chart. If timber takes half a day, then I get 1 day across the top, because you can see time in days. 1 day, and I colour in that box to say this one takes 1 day. Measuring and marking also takes half a day, so I'm going to say 1 day. Now, if I could colour half a box, maybe I would, but I really don't need to do that. Cut to length, 1 day. There you go, gets its whole day. Now, see how cut to length is on day 2, because I've already used a whole day here. And biscuiting gets its own day, gluing gets 3 days to itself, sanding gets 2 days to itself. That means, if I look at this as an example, I cannot do any thicknessing or sanding until the gluing and clamping is finished, because it starts after it's finished. Okay, so I'll start at the top, I'll show you another example. Selecting the timber, measuring and marking, they can happen at the same time because they're overlapping. If I compare that to these ones here that are not overlapping, that means they are exclusive. This has to finish before this can start. 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 So they can either be overlapping or they can be separate, which helps me work out whether they need to be run independently or at the same time. That's the end of that section. In our next video, I'm going to be showing you a little bit about finance management and how to put a budget together. It's a little bit of a mathematical one, so you might want to come to that video with calculator ready, bit of paper to write down some notes. Thanks very much. I hope that one's been helpful for you.